So the great meditation master Lumpur Blien, he had a simile for meditation. He said that the happiness of meditation is like a wild forest deer. And in the beginning, we look everywhere for the deer, but the deer is nowhere to be found. After a long time, there comes a day when we finally see the deer off in the distance. But when the deer first sees us, it immediately runs away. And Lumpur Blien said, if you want the deer to come closer to you, you have to find something that the deer likes, like some grass. And you stand there and you hold out the grass for the deer. And when the deer returns, it will come a little bit closer to you, and then it will run away again. And if you continue to stand there, holding out the grass, the deer will continue to return, and each time it will come a little bit closer before it runs away. If you're patient enough and you continue to stand there for long enough, there will come a day when the deer will walk up to us and eat the grass out of our hand. But if you try to run and grab the deer, it will run away and it will never come back. And this is a really, really wonderful simile for meditation, because in the beginning, we all come to the practice of meditation looking for the same thing. We're all looking for peace, happiness, a way to go beyond our problems. But for most of us, when we sit down and close our eyes, that happiness is nowhere to be found. And we look around in our mind and all we see is a lot of suffering. Maybe after a while we decide that there isn't any happiness there and we give up. But if we really dedicate ourselves to the practice of meditation for long enough, there will come a day when we start to see happiness arise in the mind, off in the distance. But its nature, just like the deer is having started to arise, it tends to break apart very quickly. It tends to run away very quickly. And if we want the happiness of the mind to come closer to us, we have to find something that it likes. And what is it that the happiness of the mind likes? It likes balance. It likes balanced mindfulness. The more balanced our mind is, the closer that the happiness draws to us. The more imbalanced our mind is, the further away the happiness runs from us. And what are the states of imbalance that chase the deer away, chase the happiness away? They are desire and anger, dullness, restlessness, doubt, the 5 hindrances. When the mind is overwhelmed by these emotions, the happiness of the mind runs far away. So the Buddha gave a simile once, talking about the lute, the stringed instrument, and he said that when the strings of a lute are tuned too tightly, the instrument doesn't make a beautiful sound. And when the strings are tuned too loosely, it doesn't make a beautiful sound. But only when the strings are tuned just right, when the strings are in balance, does the instrument make beautiful music. And in the same way, when our mind is too tight under the influence of emotions like desire or anger or anxiety, it doesn't experience beautiful states of happiness. It experiences only unhappiness. And in the same way, when our mind is too loose under the influence of states like dullness and boredom and depression, it also doesn't experience states of happiness. It experiences states of unhappiness. The closer the mind becomes to a state of balance, the brighter and happier and more beautiful the experience within our mind will be. So we can say that, the practice of meditation, it's very much a practice of learning how to balance our mind. And when we consider how it is that we work to balance our mind, the meditation masters, they always emphasize in the beginning that the practice of meditation, it doesn't begin when we sit down on a meditation cushion. The practice of meditation, it begins when we first open our eyes in the morning, and it doesn't end until we fall asleep at night. So the reality of training the mind is that if we really want to get anywhere in meditation, we have to be practicing meditation all the time. If it's only something that we do while we're sitting on a meditation cushion, then it's as if even if we meditate for 2 or 3 hours on the meditation cushion, then the rest of the day, if we allow our mind to just follow its moods and emotions, it's as if we have unmeditated all of the progress we've made. So the meditation teachers always emphasize that we need to begin by learning how to meditate all the time. And in the beginning, we were taught this technique of reciting a mantra, and in our tradition, we're encouraged to use the word Buddho, the name of the Buddha. We begin from a place of not having any mindfulness, and the nature of the mind for somebody who doesn't meditate is that we tend to live in our thoughts for most of the day, thoughts of the past and thoughts of the future. We tend to spin out into these thoughts. And for example, feeling of anger, we have angry thoughts arise. We become swept away by those thoughts, and spinning out into those thoughts, the anger continues to increase, and we're unable to free ourselves from that state. And the same for all of our other emotions. So the first step in trying to solve this problem and trying to find happiness and balance the mind then is learning to create mindfulness throughout the day. So repeating a mantra like Buddho to ourselves is a very practical and extremely useful way of starting to shift the habit of the mind, because in the beginning our habit of mindlessness is so incredibly powerful because we have been following that habit for so many years, for decades. So we need to have something strong to push back against that. So we're encouraged to recite Buddho constantly throughout the day to ourselves silently, and we can recite it at any speed, very fast, very slow, anything in between. We can experiment with ways of holding it, either in a tighter way or in a looser way, whatever feels right. We try to keep this word going all day, whether we're working or cooking or even listening to somebody speak. We find that we're able to continue to have that mantra going basically all the time. And we're training the mind to start to have an anchor, so that even when thoughts arise, we can still think, and sometimes we still get a bit swept away by thoughts, but we don't get completely swept away. We don't get 100% swept away. We try to keep most of our attention always on the meditation word. And, in this way, in the beginning, it's something that seems incredibly difficult or even impossible. Over time, if we really put effort into this, we will be able to start to shift the habit of the mind from always being overwhelmed by our thoughts more and more into having an anchor in the meditation word, and we can start to tie that into the body as well, so that eventually we teach our mind to be aware of the meditation word and the body all the time, even when we're focusing on things outside of ourselves. We try to keep 80% or so of our awareness always on that meditation word and on our body. This is, for most of us, is very difficult in the beginning, so this is a good place to start. And when we sit down for formal meditation, then we continue to have the mantra, and we focus on the breathing and the body. And in the beginning, this is kind of enough to be very challenging. At some point we start to change that habit, and our habit of attention starts to become more and more grounded in the body, more and more grounded in a meditation word. And we still have thoughts, we still think, we still sometimes get swept away by thoughts, but we don't totally lose ourselves. And at some point we'll start to notice that maybe we are suffering less than we used to, but we're probably still suffering. Maybe that technique doesn't really make the mind totally peaceful. And, it's possible to have, say, a feeling of anger, and even if we're not feeling, say if we're not thinking angry thoughts, it's possible to be present with that feeling of anger and still be totally overwhelmed by it and be suffering an incredible amount. So there's another problem. The first problem is our relationship to our thoughts, getting swept away by our thoughts. But the second problem is our relationship to our feelings, the feelings that we have in our body, the feelings that arise with our emotions of desire and anger and fear. We have a very strong habit of being swept away by whatever feelings arise in the body, in the same way as if somebody were to fall into a river. And having fallen into the river, they're swept away by that river, and they have no power in controlling where they go. In the same way, the physical feelings that arise in the body, we tend to be immediately overwhelmed by them. So this practice of developing mindfulness eventually it starts to become about how can we balance the mind, how can we balance the energy, because if we pay attention to our feelings, physical feelings like anger, if we don't pay attention in the right way, and just attention is not enough. We can be paying attention, but that painful emotion can be increasing, and we might still be overwhelmed by it. So at some point we have to start to pay attention to how we're using our mindfulness, and this is where this aspect of balance starts to come in. So we're often taught mindfulness of breathing, and we see that when the Buddha taught mindfulness of breathing, like in the Anapanasati Sutta, it wasn't just about paying attention to the in and out breath. There are many other steps, and those steps, are heavily focused on how can we use the breath. How can we use the breath, breathing in, calming the bodily formations, breathing in, calming the mental formations, breathing in, feeling rapture, joy, happiness. So it starts to become how can we use the breath to affect our emotions. And it's well known in the world that the breath can be used to calm oneself down. Like deep breathing techniques are very well known for working with stress and working with anger. So it's well known that the breath can be used in this way to affect our emotions, but we really take it on as a real practice, as something to cultivate, trying to learn how can we use the breath and the awareness of the body to balance the energy in the body, to balance the mind, because the way to prevent ourselves from being overwhelmed by our emotions is not through. We tend to react with the two extremes. We either get swept away by our emotions, like anger. We get swept away by it, and that anger grows and grows, or we try to push it away. We try to distract ourselves from it, run away from it. Neither of those reactions will actually solve the problem of anger or desire or fear. The only way to really solve the problem is to go right through our problems, and this is through learning how to be present with our emotions. So we use the breath. The breath is a very soothing object. It's a very soft object. We can use the breath to, for example, breathe through the painful emotions like anger. We breathe through it, breathe around it. We feel a sense of being more relaxed. At the same time, for many of our emotions, the mind is moving in two different directions. So we also need to have the aspect of the opposite of softness. The opposite of the breath is solidity and strength. And for many emotions like dullness and drowsiness and depression, if we just focus on the breath and focus on relaxing, it may actually make the problem worse, because if the mind is too loose, then applying a very soft object will just make it even more loose. The place of real happiness is the place of balance, and is the place of going beyond our suffering. So we have to also learn how to create a sensation of strength and solidity and energy in the body, and use that to balance with the breath to balance the mind in the midst of its emotions. And there are many ways to do this. I remember hearing Luang Por Pasano give a guided meditation once when he was giving the instructions like on the in-breath, you fill the body with air and just focus on making the body really, you sit up straight, really straight, and you focus on just making the body very solid and strong and full of energy. And then on the out breath, you just relax everything and just bring this complete sense of softness. And this is a really great way of beginning to experiment with these two types of energy and beginning to experiment with what does it feel like to be really solid and what does it feel like to be really soft. And then, in our own practice, we have to experiment. We have to be willing to really always be investigating and experimenting and see what works and what doesn't work. So we can start with a technique like that, breathing in and focusing on solidity, breathing out, focusing on softness. Then it depends on what emotion is arising in our mind. And do we need more softness? Do we need more solidity? Are there other ways of cultivating these two types of energy? It's something for us to investigate, and we will find that the tendency is for our emotions to overwhelm the mind, push the mind out of balance, and then to increase and increase. The more that we are able to find this balance through mindfulness of the body, mindfulness of the breathing, the more it contains our emotions. Our negative emotions are very much like a fire. It's like a fire that arises in the heart area, and just like a fire, if the fire is not contained, it will spread quickly and burn everything down. And this is like our desire, anger, fear. When it arises, it's like a fire, and if we don't quickly contain it, it will spread throughout our mind. It will burn down our happiness. So the more that we're able to balance the mind, balance the energy in the midst of that emotion, the more it's as if we have contained it. And in the beginning, it's an incredible struggle. It's a struggle to, like, as if we're fighting a fire. We try to contain it, and maybe the fire jumps over our fire break, or it gets out of the container. So we're using mindfulness of the body to first try to contain our emotions, to prevent them from growing. And then, if we do this in a skillful way, in the right way, it will be just like a fire that, if it's contained, it can't spread beyond that point, but it still burns. And then over time, it decreases in intensity until it finally goes out. And it's the same with our emotions. If we're able to contain our desire, anger, fear with mindfulness of the body, and we're able to contain it in a balanced way, then we will see that at first it stops growing and it's just burning. Over time, it will fade in intensity. Eventually, it will pass away. And it depends on our skill in our strength of mindfulness and the strength of the defilements. For most of us, it's a real battle. We're really fighting to contain our emotions and prevent them from overwhelming the mind. And as we practice over a long period of time and we gain skill in this, we will find that the more skilled we become at mindfulness, or the stronger that the mindfulness is, the faster that our emotions will pass away, or say the faster the fire will burn out, because it's as if the fire is burning because it has fuel, and our defilements are burning because they have fuel, and it's like our our attachment to them is what's fueling them. Our being shaken by them is what's fueling them. So that the less moved we are by them, the quicker they will lose their power over us, the quicker they will fade away. After a long time, we might find that there are times when we sit meditation and maybe we have a lot of suffering. Other times, maybe we're able to let go of that suffering. Maybe we start to feel at ease. If there's a sense of ease in the body and the mind, it's as if the deer is very close to us and is about to eat the grass out of our hand. It's as if the happiness of the mind is close by. And if we can just protect that ease and not let it drift into subtle dullness or start to drift into subtle restlessness, if we can protect that ease and keep the mind balanced there, then in the same way that one would protect a small flame in some grass. The small flame is very fragile, but if you protect it from the wind, then it can very quickly ignite into a very large fire. And the more we practice, the more we start to learn that from a place of ease, if we can just continue to keep the mind balanced and not try to run after the happiness like the deer, if we try to reach out at the last moment and grab the deer, it will run away. So the more kind of eager we are to get that happiness, that desire chases it away. But if we're really able to just be patiently present in a balanced way, we'll find that it's possible for that ease to ignite or blossom into incredible peace and happiness. And this is the beginning of the happiness that we've been looking for so long. And if we reflect on, where did that happiness come from? Maybe it will take us many years of meditation before we're able to experience, any kind of happiness in meditation. But that happiness, it came from all of those times we sat for many years with very strong suffering, and we just focused on how can we decrease our suffering just a little bit at a time. I think that's a skillful, very good goal for our meditation. We tend to sit down and maybe we think, I'm going to make the mind peaceful, I'm going to really have a great meditation. But I think, much more skillful goal than that is, can I just reduce my suffering just a little bit in this meditation session? Can I just learn how to have a little bit less desire, anger, fear? It doesn't really seem like much, it doesn't really seem like we're getting anywhere, but the path of decreasing our suffering just a little bit, that's the road, that's the path that if we walk on it long enough, it will eventually lead to real happiness in our meditation. And there's another aspect of meditation that I think is important to point out, and that is if we think that the practice of meditation is something that will be pleasant and smooth and carefree, then we are likely going to be in for a very unpleasant surprise, because the reality of meditation for most of us for a long time is very much like the the meditation masters often use the simile of a boxing match, like where we're in a boxing ring against our opponent, and our opponent is bigger, faster, and stronger than us, and he's just hitting us over and over again. And some people might think that that's not a good simile for describing meditation, because we think that meditation is about peace and happiness. But if we really reflect, what does it feel like to have strong desire and longing for something that we can't have? What does it feel like to have strong anger towards someone that we have to be around? Does it feel like to have strong fear towards something that we have to do? It feels like being punched in the face. So this is the meaning of this simile. This is what our negative emotions are doing to us all the time. They're really hurting us. It really hurts to have a very strong negative emotion arise and not be able to get away from it. It feels as if we're just being punched right in the face. And sometimes, in the practice, we get knocked over, like the boxer. Sometimes we get knocked to the ground. Sometimes we experience emotions that are so extreme that we just feel like we can't endure it. We just feel like we can't keep going. And it's like the boxer who has been knocked to the ground. And, the boxer has a choice to make. Is he going to give up, or is he going to get back up and keep on fighting? And the meditation masters, they always say that in this battle, in this fight against our negative emotions, against our defilements, we can't lose as long as we just keep getting back up. And I think for all of us, I can say for myself, having practiced in this way for quite a few years now, I think, this experience of being knocked to the ground is something we will all have, and we'll have it many times. We'll have it many times. And, we just have to keep getting back up. And even when we experience, and we will experience things that are extreme, things that are maybe more extreme than we've ever experienced before we started practicing. And, sometimes it really does seem like, who could bear with this pain? This is just, this is unbearable. But, it is possible to keep going. And just like the storms that arise in the sky, it doesn't matter how powerful the storm is and how much wind and rain there is, it can't last forever. So if we just keep getting back up, and in the beginning, practice of meditation is very much like just trying to learn how to protect ourselves, trying to learn how to prevent our opponent from hurting us too badly. How can we just not suffer so much? If we really devote ourselves to this practice, and we really start to develop skill over a very long period of time, eventually we reach a place where we can start to fight back, and we can start to hit our opponent back. We might reach a place after many years where we're able to knock our opponent to the ground. And in that moment, even though our opponent will get back up and start fighting again, we've realized something there in that moment of knocking our opponent to the ground. We've realized that he can be beaten. And that's something that maybe for a long time we didn't think was possible. And the Buddha said that one who truly balances the mind and temporarily goes beyond one's defilements and experiences the real happiness of meditation, it's as if they've blindfolded Mara. It's as if they've blindfolded their defilements. It's as if they're Their defilements can't find them there. Their defilements can't hurt them there. It's as if we've temporarily knocked our defilements to the ground, and from that point on, shortly afterwards, our defilements will re-arise, and they might seem stronger than ever, but in that moment we will have realized that these defilements that we thought were all powerful for so many years, they can be beaten, and this is the way to beat them. So I very much hope that everyone has been able to enjoy themselves at least a little bit over the past month here in this retreat. But if not, if you haven't had any happiness at all, if you've just been suffering and struggling the whole time, just know that you're definitely not alone. That's actually kind of the norm. That's a very typical experience for a retreat like this, but also just living in a monastery long term. That is actually the norm. And I can say, for myself, I first came here about 14 years ago, and I have spent quite a few winter retreats just being thoroughly miserable the entire time. So that is something which is quite common. But if we just keep practicing, that experience will change. It has to change. It's just the nature of the practice. So I very much hope that everyone will be able to experience real happiness in our meditation over the next few months of this retreat. But if not, if you don't experience any happiness in meditation over the next few months, that's also totally fine, because I'm sure that the effort we will put into our practice over the next few months, if it doesn't lead to happiness during this retreat, I'm sure that it will definitely lead to happiness for us in our meditation at some point in the future. So these are just a few reflections for this evening.